Hola, hola everyone, and welcome to your NARSA Weekly Update for the week commencing Monday the 25th of August 2025. It's Gary here again. Yes, I'm doing the whole laugh for the second week in a row because I am on the balcony in my apartment in Mexico. Or I should say the hotel room in Mexico. Leo and I are checking out from the hotel here in about 3 hours or so. So it's getting some final packing done, getting ourselves a wee bite to eat and heading down to check out and get the bus over to the airport. But that's not why you're tuning in today. Well, actually, do you know what? The reason I say that is that I've not got my usual equipment. Everything is completely on the laptop today. I don't have my external mic or anything. There's a road kind of close to where I am. The pools are fairly close here, so you may or may not hear some background noise. You get what you pay for, I guess, is probably the best way to say it. But you know what? In terms of Rangers, I could start almost this week's pod with almost what I started last week's pod with. This roller coaster that we're on is utterly wild, and obviously this week, we are on a dip. One of the bigger dips of the roller coaster, and you've all witnessed exactly what's happened here, so I don't need to really truly go over everything. But here's my take right now as we sit here on almost at the beginning of September. Like, Russell Martin is not by his own fault in a more difficult position than he would have been if he was the manager 2 or 3 managers ago. Now let's just kind of have a wee bit of a time machine moment here. We as a club are scarred, and we're emotional, and we are desperate for the return to success, or desperate for the foundational signs of a return to success that we absolutely crave. And at the first sign of trouble, we are very, very, very sensitive to it. We're hypersensitive to what's going on right now. And I think I mentioned last week about we haven't experienced the new manager bounce that we typically do when we get a new manager, and we've been quite experienced in that over the last 5 or so years. And we haven't experienced that, which is kind of new in and of itself. And I didn't realise how much I enjoyed the new manager bounce. If this leads to bigger and better things, then I'll take this shorter term pain. Of course, I think we all will, but I don't know. Russell Martin knew what he was signing up for. He had to know. I mean, he's already said he watched a whole bunch of games. He was really pushing to get this particular job. He's admitted that, and or acknowledged that, I guess, maybe not admitted. And he, he knows where things stand. He knows what the demands and expectations of the fans are. I would assume he knows what the demands and expectations of his senior leadership team are. And that's what he signed up for. So he's going to get what he's going to get. And what I've started to notice now, especially after yesterday's game, is that there are definitely cracks appearing in the foundation, or chinks in the armour, or whatever it is you want to say about that, based on the comments, based on his demeanour when he was talking about Hamza Egeman, and his refusal to play, his acknowledgement that he was injured. It just seemed the injury seemed to come during the game. He didn't seem to want to mention the injury prior to the game. Potentially that could happen, I suppose, but what happened is we started without a recognised striker, and we started without a left back yesterday. And what Russell Martin himself had said is that we wouldn't be letting people go without a strategy for replacements coming in. Yet that's exactly what we were doing. We had an opportunity to know these players were going out. Now, I understand from a transfer perspective, you don't get to absolutely control every single nth degree of what goes on. I appreciate that, in terms of timing and who's going when and such. So there might be the odd game, but for us to not start with that, I mean, this is against St Mirren, who had 1 point from the first 2 games. I mean, the way that we inflate other teams to act as if they're Real Madrid or Barcelona is just absolutely incredible to me. And then Russell Martin also said after Cyril Dessers was injured a couple of weeks back there, he's not fit for the weekend, but he'll be good for Tuesday. No sign of him on Tuesday, no sign of him on Sunday, and who knows whether he's going to even be in the squad for Wednesday. So I'm starting to wonder now, as he's a good communicator in terms of he's a fluent speaker, but I'm starting to wonder if he needs some sort of communications lessons or some communications coaching. As you know, I'm a coach. I could help him with this. Quick plug here, but for me, he's starting to really, truly delve into the Michael Beale territory in terms of what's coming out of his face every time he opens his mouth. And a lot of this stuff he can't undo once he's said it. It's not Philippe Clement judge my team in September or October or November or whatever it was he said last season, but I'm starting to see a lot of inaccuracies. There are a lot of inconsistencies in what he's doing, and I think that comes as a result of him realising that that it's not quite as easy to win football games in Scotland as he possibly thought it was going to be. And now if I believe what I read on the internet yesterday, that he has, officially the worst record of any Rangers manager coming into a job in history, and that's a long history, folks. So we've got what we've got. So let's go through the game segment as quickly as we can. The first game, of course, was last Tuesday's 3-1 home defeat to Bruges. It was coming, folks, wasn't it? It truly was coming. Something like that I had said on a previous pod. If we come up against a team who can finish, we're giving up chances big time here. And after a decent start for us to the game, we end up, with the goals that just started the carnage. The first goal was an absolute abomination. A kind of nothing ball through. The defence stopped. Doesn't look like there's much communication at all, if any, with Jack Butland. The Jack Butland is absolutely sleeping, so he just half comes out, half, actually not even half, probably a third comes out, 2/3 doesn't come out, and he's in absolute no man's land, and he gets chipped. Decent enough finish, but what an awful goal. And as Russell Martin talked about yesterday after a St Mirren game, we don't react well to going a goal down. The heads go down, we lose concentration, we feel sorry for ourselves, a combination of all three of those things, and cue Calamity Jane style, things just being all over the place, and before we know it, we're 2-0 down with a guy completely unmarked from a set piece again, and passing it into the net, and then we're very shortly after we're 3-0 down. The third one being a very good finish. I'll give the guy that, almost Finlay Curtis-esque, and we can talk about that in a wee minute here, but we just did not clear our lines at all. There's no conviction in there to get the ball anywhere out of the area, and it's just lame, completely lame. And we did get the simplest of goals around about 50 minutes just after the start of the second half, and you're like, right, okay, so we've reduced the deficit now to 2. And then towards the end of the game, but there's a bit of huffing and puffing. Obviously, we're giving up some chances, they're giving up some chances and such. But we had a perfectly, I can't see why the goal that we got from Gassama was chalked off. I've seen it, I've seen it in replay a ton of times, and I've no idea why the referee, I'd love to know, maybe if somebody knows, if the referee came out and explained that afterwards to say this is exactly why we did it, because he was interfered. The goalkeeper never had possession of the ball, never had full control of the ball at all, and 3-2 would have made this week's game certainly interesting, where you're kind of, we don't have a lot of confidence, we don't have a lot of hope in the team, but it's only one goal, and is it feasible that we could go and get a 1-0 victory, take it to extra time, maybe penalties, and see if we get in? Yeah, probably, possibly, who knows with this team, but taking a 2-goal lead at home, I would imagine it would be enough for Bruges and consign us to where we thought we were. I mean, I thought we were going to be was the Europa League. I didn't see a clear path to the Champions League for us, although it would be great to get access to that funding straight away. But we'll see. Obviously, there's still 90 minutes to play, and a lot can happen in 90 minutes. But it's just compounded everything that we've been seeing. In terms of positives, as I said, we started well, and we're only 2 goals down, which I know doesn't feel like a positive, but it could have been 5. It felt like it was going to be 5 at one point. And we did stop the bleeding. We did take some affirmative action after the third goal, which would be kind of nice to do after the first goal, and stop the bleeding to make sure it wasn't a complete abomination or a humiliation. And despite him being completely culpable for the first goal, are certainly joint culpable, the defenders stopping as well. The Super Jack Butland did make some great saves to keep us in it as well, if in it means that we've got a chance to, see what happens on Wednesday. The negatives, I don't know where to start. We've seen this before. I don't know that everyone expected Champions League football, but then when we got through the first 2 ties, which I thought the Olympiacos one Panathinaikos would have been the toughest of all the ones that we could have faced, we start to dare to dream, don't we? And then we get a little bit romanticised about what could be, and then we just absolutely make a mess of things. And and we really don't make them work. See if we made them work for every single goal, I would be okay with that. But we don't make them work, and that's the real annoyance. And some of the calamitous defending was just beyond a joke. In terms of the stats, it said we had 52% possession with 7 shots on goal, and get this, 1 on target, versus they had 10 shots on goal with 7 on target. So that kind of gives you an idea of the chances that we're giving up and how good the chances are that we're giving up. In terms of the ref watch, again, I've no idea why he disallowed the Gassama goal. I've seen it a number of times, and a direct result of that, which has impacted the tie, is going to get a 5 out of 10 for that. And then we come back to the St Mirren game yesterday, and we, as I say, this is a team that's got 1 point from 2 games. They haven't scored a league goal yet, and we're playing them up as if they're going to be something absolutely brilliant. And they do what we thought St Mirren were going to do. You know, they hustle us and they harry us, and they give us, you know, there's 2 men on the ball, lots and lots of energy. Like we've seen, how many times have we seen this game over the years? Like it's tons and tons and tons of time, and we just don't seem to give ourselves that opportunity to be able to learn from what it is we're seeing. And then we're in a situation where, with a big long ball through, where we're completely sleeping, the 2 centre backs aren't communicating whatsoever, then Suter's on the wrong side, he's not quick enough to get back with the guy. Butland doesn't come out quite as far as maybe he could and should have to put the guy off big time, and then the ball goes in. They're looking for a bit of an offside, but there's nothing, absolutely no offside talk whatsoever. You know, there's there's just a situation where we're defending the way we've always defended, with different defenders, almost different defenders then, you know. And we're starting, as I mentioned at the very outset, starting without a recognised left back because we've sold them, and we're starting without a recognised striker away to St Mirren, you know. And I get you need to manage the game, but it's all kind of frantic, you know. There's fouls going in right, left, and centre, and then of course we get the first booking when Nico Raskin gets a booking for a foul that you've seen everybody else do for, you know, for pretty much most of the game. We've got a chance in about 22, 23 minutes or so, whatever it was, where Lyle Cameron had a good opportunity to get on. You know, if he'd have headed it, I can see why you wouldn't, but you know, on replay when you look at it, you see that there was an opportunity there possibly to head it and see what was going to happen. Didn't take that opportunity, and then you know, their goalie has a couple of good saves. That's the one thing I would say about yesterday's game. We did get an opportunity to give ourselves that chance to basically, you know, equalise and move on and maybe hopefully win the game. But we obviously didn't do that. A lot of other times we don't. We're just huffing and puffing, and not a lot is happening. And then, you know, we're in a situation where we make some substitutions. We bring on Danilo and Moore at half time, but it's after a wee bit of a bounce at the beginning of the game. It's kind of just the same afterwards, you know. And then you've got Finlay Curtis coming on, and within a few minutes, maybe not even a minute, I don't know how long it was, like a couple of minutes maybe, we're level with a great strike from the edge of the penalty box that looks like it's been deflected maybe twice, something like that. Certainly deflected once off of their defender, which is absolutely great. We'll take that. And the thing that I liked about it, he doesn't look super happy. He doesn't look like he's, you know, an 18-year-old boy that's giddy with the fact that he's getting first team and his mum and dad are in the stands and he's just so happy to be there. He's pissed off because he's a goal scorer for the season, obviously so far, him and Tav, and he's putting in the shifts and he's not getting the starts, and I think he really wants to get the starts. So I do like that, you know. Maybe just look a wee bit more. I don't know what the word is. Happy, I guess it is happy, you know, to score, but that doesn't mean you can't come with a wee bit of steel there. And then we created, you know, one more chance when Tav had a shot, and then Danilo actually nearly converted that shot, and the goalie saved it with his face, it looked like. And then at the very end, we've got Super Jack Butland to thank for a great header. A great save from a header from a set piece, shocker, and a free header, shocker, from the set piece to give us the opportunity to take the point away. 3 points from 3 games, 3-1 each draws, a 0 goal difference on 3 games. Motherwell and St Mirren and Dundee. Motherwell, St Mirren and Dundee, we've got 3 points from that. As I said earlier, the worst start, apparently, that we've ever had. The positives, not getting beat, was obviously a positive. We'll take a point. No, a courtesies goal was good. No injuries or suspensions. We get Jigga back obviously next week for that. And I thought Nico Raskin was great the entire game. I was really worried he was going to get himself caught with a foul or something like that at the end, get a second yellow card, and then be suspended for next week, because that would be an absolute disaster for us. But no, we didn't get that. In terms of negatives, we've just seen that type of game before, haven't we? You know, we've just watched that game time and time and time again. We've lost that type of goal time and time and time again. And I just don't understand that. And we've experienced that type of result time and time and time again. Nothing is changing. We're not moving forward yet. And how many games does it need to take before we move forward? In terms of the referee watch, Nick Walsh, you get what you get from him. Bit of an ego-driven guy. I think, you know, as I mentioned, there's a whole bunch of fouls exactly the same as Nico Raskin's, and they don't get almost exactly the same as Nico Raskin's, and they don't get yellow cards. His gets a yellow card, and then, you know, it never really goes our way, I guess is probably what I'm saying in terms of the referees. And then, and at the beginning of the second half, he books Aaron's or Aaron's, however you pronounce it, and the Savon player for absolutely nothing. I mean, I didn't see it first time on RTV, and it shows you the replay. Literally, absolutely nothing to it. And he decides it's a yellow card for both of those players. That could be quite material for us in terms of what it is we're actually trying to accomplish in the season when you get suspensions and all sorts of stuff like that. I just don't understand it whatsoever. It says on the stats on live score that we had 71% possession, kind of felt like that. And we had 10 shots on goal with 6 on target versus 11 shots on goal with 4 on target from them. Kind of felt like that as well. So I guess the stats are probably right there. Sorry, back to Nick Walsh. I'm going to give him a 6 out of 10 instead of the standard 7 out of 10 that he would typically get for that. So yeah, we're getting what we're getting in terms of these games, and that's just the way that it's going to be, unfortunately. Our next games, of course, is Wednesday's UEFA Champions League playoff game against away to Bruges, and that's a 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time kickoff, 8 p.m. UK. We know what we need to do. We need to win by 2 clear goals, 3 ideally to go through. Based on what we've seen on Tuesday there, that doesn't look very likely to be happening at all. And then just to compound our domestic start to the season, we're at home on Sunday, another early one on Sunday, noon Eastern Standard Time, noon UK, 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on the 31st of August against that mob from the east end of the city. They have a chance to go 9 points ahead before the end of August. 9 points behind before the end of August doesn't even bear thinking about. Who's betting here that we're going to get a 1-1 draw at the next game? That may be, I don't bet at all, but that may be worthy of a bet. But I mean, we need to win this to bring it back to 3 points, or there's just going to be more and more and more unrest. So we'll see how that goes. In terms of RTV, never heard anything material yesterday in terms of any challenges or anything like that. So I think we were in good shape. On shout-outs, I would like to do a shout-out to, I mentioned these briefly earlier, to our left-back department for the first team that we just decided to sell this week, where we had Jeff Day leaving to go to Palmeiras in his home country of Brazil, and Ridvan Yilmaz also going home to Turkey to Besiktas, who both left on these undisclosed fees. That's annoying, isn't it? It's nice to know how much money you kind of recoup for these players, but maybe that's part of maybe that becomes, I mean, it will get revealed, I guess, in the financials at the end of the fiscal year, but maybe it's a ploy or a strategy in the transfer window where other clubs don't go, well, you got 6 million for him and we think this guy is worth 5 million, so give us 5 of that 6 and then you've got 1 left. Maybe it's something to do with that. And of course, we did get a couple of guys out on loan as well. Jose Cifuentes has gone to Toronto FC on loan. I was worried for a second it was going to be Calgary, the Calgary Cavalry, and we'd have to go and watch him here in Calgary. That guy, I mean, did he sign like a 15-year deal? It seems like we've had him forever, and he's played about 4 games for us, and he's just been on loan everywhere across the globe. So maybe this is his last year, who knows? And also Ben Davies joined Oxford United on loan. Both of those are 1 season long loans. So congratulations and thank you to all 4 of those guys for everything that you did or didn't do for Rangers over the piece. The Rangers women's team drew 2-2 at home to Hearts yesterday, and it was at Ibrox as well, which it just isn't good enough. Certainly not at this stage of the season. I'm afraid we should be winning every single game against teams that are not, as it turns out now, Hibs, Glasgow City and that mob. So to draw to Hearts, who do produce the odd sticky result for teams, I understand that, isn't good enough. Leanne Crichton is having a quite uninspiring start. Let's just say that to her tenure. So hopefully things start to pick up and the results start to really motor in from here on in. But that damages their position at the top of the table this early on. Just a personal one. I know I did mention this last week. Leo did not get to play in the provincial championships that were held in Red Deer, which is basically halfway between Calgary and Edmonton. But his team absolutely blew the other team away in the final with a 63-7 victory. So it was good to kind of see it on this app that we use over here called TeamSnap, to see exactly what was happening, and obviously the game and the season is done now. So a very, very successful season. You can't sniff at a 63-7 victory. I would take that in both of the games that we've got coming up this week. Just a reminder of the London Marathon run for Amanda and Jason Jr. Ross, who are doing that next April, and they are doing that, of course, for the Royal British Legion. I'll leave the link to the article in there in the show notes. And the Melbourne City Loyal Rangers Supporters Club Culture Weekend, November 21st to 22nd, boat cruise, Ian Ferguson, Gary Stevens, Stuart Monroe, whole bunch of things like that. In terms of the convention update, nothing material. I was actually thinking about this morning in preparation. Right now it is 8:57 a.m. here in Puerto Vallarta, and I was thinking this morning just in terms of the convention updates, and really what we had that 5 weeks of absolute madness of stupidity and bad behaviour in the aftermath of the AGM, and then there's been a tiny little bit of a lull, and then everybody was travelling. Brian Campbell was over in the UK and then went to the Czech Republic, and I'm in Mexico, and Alan McWatt was back home and such. So we'll get a groove on when everybody's kind of essentially back home. Home would be in inverted commas, and then see where we're going from there. But in terms of the convention update, there has been no discussion or decision. There wasn't a meeting held last week there. We do have a meeting scheduled for tomorrow night, and we'll see how it goes there. Now, that actually leads into a section. Now, I used to kind of call it other business, but I'm going to call it NARSA Business from this point forward, where I'm going to get NARSA-specific updates and provide them at this point in the podcast. So as I mentioned, the main update, of course, for this week is the fact that we do have a meeting tomorrow evening, 6 p.m. my time, and we'll just basically have a catch up on what's happened over the last wee while and see where we go from there. But I did get an update from the president, Alan McWatt, over his trip there, and he did say that we are still in the process of setting up meetings with the member clubs, and we've had some feedback in terms of availability as to who is available to meet and when and what the agenda is going to be. We still do need some feedback, so if your club has been contacted, and every club should have been contacted by now, well, saying that, Calgary hasn't been, but we're represented on the executive, so I don't really worry about that. But if you've been contacted and you haven't got back yet, please do get back. We do want to hear from you, and it can be about anything. It can be about anything you have in terms of Rangers. It's not us just shining a light in your face and saying, tell us some good stuff or tell us what we need to do to get it better or anything like that. And as I mentioned briefly there, Alan was actually back home in Glasgow there. Well, Glasgow's not exactly his home, but he's back home, and he had a bunch of meetings at Ibrox and with some key folks there, which was great from a relationship building perspective, and great also just to put faces to names and start to put some dialogue and some strategies into place. So he did meet Greg Mailer, he met Greg Marshall, and met Gary Gibson. I guess he could only meet people with the letter G in their names, so that's a thing. And this week there is a meeting to be held with RTV, with David Melvin from RTV, and in terms of what the packages look like per club and the payment terms and such like that. So looking forward to hearing the outputs from that. And there is also a meeting with the Ticket Office leadership later this week to essentially provide some feedback and share some thoughts on what's working, and if there's anything that we can all do better, both the Ticket Office side and the NARSA side. We have a fairly decent process that we've got a fair amount of success with in terms of getting tickets, but like everything, there can always be improvements made, and it will be good to see how that goes as well. So lots of really good club involvement. There'll probably be a wee bit more to share next week after Alan actually gets an opportunity to talk about it on the meeting tomorrow afternoon. And I'd just like to place on record the thanks to Alan for doing that. I know when you go back home, things can be very, very busy when you're there, but when you think about it, Alan booked this trip long before being the president of NARSA was a thing in his life at all. And for then him to take, multiple days to go and have conversations with the personnel over there, that's taken away from family time. And a lot of times people don't quite grasp that when they see the outputs of meetings, or they hear about it, or whatever that looks like. So kudos to him for taking that time. And it is very exciting as well. Don't get me wrong, walking in the front doors or walking into Argyle House and getting to meet with, some of the leadership and such. But it's time away from your family. He wasn't planning to do that. He did it of his own volition. And thank you very, very much to doing that. It's not insignificant. On to the communication section. The Gers guide actually was published again today. I guess, is it every 2 weeks we're doing it now, or just whenever we feel like it? I don't know. But there wasn't any mention, I don't think, of an away days, but I imagine there would be some highlights of the St Mirren game yesterday. There is Rangers women's team highlights on Rangers TV, and there's a feature of the last time we qualified for the Champions League, which was only 3 years ago. It feels longer, doesn't it? But when we qualified against PSV, so there's a feature on RTV about that, maybe hopefully to inspire us to do something spectacular in Belgium this week, maybe. Tomorrow is the press conference for the Bruges game. Wednesday, of course, is the Bruges game. Not a lot happening Thursday. Friday is the press conference for the Old Firm match against that mob. Not a lot happening on Saturday. And then Sunday, we have 2 games. We have the Old Firm game in the morning, and then we have the Rangers women's team at home to Motherwell. And this one's back at Broadwood now, not at Ibrox there as well. And just another reminder of the 5 Stars evening with Barry Ferguson, Alan McGregor, Neil McCann and Billy Dodds on the 3rd of January. Who knows, the way things are going right now, they might actually be the management team at that point. I wonder if that was written into their contract to say, if on the odd occurrence you end up back at Ibrox as the management team on a more permanent basis, you will still fulfil your obligation to this event on the 3rd of January. Who knows? I guess we'll wait and see. I think we all want Russell Martin to succeed. We all want Rangers to succeed, and if he starts to succeed, then all the better for the team, the club and the fans. But right now, folks, it is looking pretty grim. Okay, I need to go pack my suitcase and get my boy wakened and go down for some last minute breakfast here. So that will do it for this week, my friends. As always, thank you very, very, very much for taking the time to listen. Please do share it with someone that you think might enjoy it. I've said it the last 2 podcasts for sure. Maybe we're only back for 2 or 3. What is it? I can't even remember the number now. But we've got 2 massive games this week. I don't have a massive amount of confidence going into either of them, but let's just see what happens. And until next week, please do take care of yourselves and all the very best, okay? Follow.